go ahead, get yourself a beverage of choice because we got a lot to talk about. April was a bit of a ride. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Nakia. Welcome to my channel. We are here to discuss everything that I read and of course DNF'd in the month of April. As I said in the intro, I got a lot to talk about. I had some surprises in good ways and bad ways and some new favorite books. So let's just get into it. All right, so this month, because I have so many books to talk about, I am going to go in order so I can keep things straight, because when I try to skip around, when I have this many books, I get confused. So we are going to start with book number 1, which is Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. I did a whole vlog where I tried a chapter of all the books that my daughter picked for me to read this month. And I talked about this in that one because I DNF'd it in that video. I will link it here. But I just was not into this book. It just was boring for me. This is not my kind of fantasy. I know this is like classic, but I prefer more urban fantasy, things grounded in reality. And this just was very slow. It just was not holding my attention. And as I said, this is just not my kind of thing. So you can check out that video to see what I had to say in real time. But yeah, I DNF'd this. Where'd I get? I DNF'd this after the first chapter because this was a try a chapter vlog where I read this. So I got to page 17. I did my best. Let's move on. The next book I DNF'd was also chosen by my daughter for me to read in April. And this one, I'm actually surprised. I mean, kind of and kind of not. When she chose this book for me, I told her I was already aware of this book and I decided not to read it because I'm not really into the true crime type of fictional thriller books. So I was like, I'll give it a chance. Hopefully I'm wrong. And for this one, I wasn't, but I'm talking about A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. Again, I talked about this in that same video, so I'm not going to go too in depth, but I did read a little more after I finished that. I thought I was going to like it. I read 2 chapters in the vlog and I was intrigued, but I ended up reading 2 more chapters after that vlog, and that is where I got off the ride. For me, the writing was fine. I just wasn't into the main character, Chloe. I didn't care about her. I just was not invested in her life, and this is supposed to be about where this young lady named Chloe, her dad was killing teenage girls and then he goes to jail. I guess this happened when she was a kid. When she's an adult, some other murders start to happen and they seem similar to her dad, something like that. I don't know, I didn't get that far. This just started off with her dealing with being a therapist and her own personal issues, and she's like stealing drugs, you know, prescription drugs and taking them, and I just wasn't here for that. I'm like, you're a therapist and that's what you're doing? She's a bit of a mess. I just wasn't into her. She wasn't likable. I didn't care about her. It was just taking too long to get to some suspense, some thrillerness, some mystery, some something. And I just was not interested enough to keep reading any more about this woman. And then we had to deal with some descriptions of her and her man, and they were just nauseating for me. So you know I have a little taste for you to know what I'm talking about. So when I'm reading a physical book, I take pictures so I can go back and look at these quotes that I want to talk about. So here's a little taste. I could see his biceps bulging through his light blue button-up as he hoisted my life into the air and balanced it on his shoulders. As he hoisted my life into the air, biceps through his light blue button-up. It just came out of nowhere too. We were just dealing with her being a therapist and whatnot, and then all of a sudden her man comes along and we getting this kind of stuff. Took me out of it. Here's some more. This is when she kissed him. I feel the warmth of his tongue in my mouth, savoring the way his presence physically calms my body down, slows my heart rate, my breathing, the same way the Xanax does. No, 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 and no. Just no, stop it. This is the last one I have for you. I can smell his body wash, his spiced deodorant. Here we go again with these descriptions of scent. Spiced deodorant. I don't know what that is for you, but it doesn't conjure up pleasant things for me. I was just like, spice deodorant, okay. Clearly women like men to smell like spices and nutmeg and wood smoke and things like that. Not me. But anyway, so like I said, this just was not for me. I was like, don't care about her. Don't care what's gonna happen with her. I'm not intrigued enough about her dad being a serial killer or any other killer. I just don't care. So we were done with that. And I'm pretty sure I already said it, but I DNF'd this at chapter 5. I was at page 30 something, 32. Moving on. And this next one, I actually threw in to replace one of the books that my daughter picked out for me, because if you didn't see my TBR video, one of the rules that I established was that if I DNF'd one of her books, I could throw in one of my own. So this one was at the top of my backlist TBR list. And so I was like, you know what? I was waiting to read this in spring. We're going to read it now. And that would be The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Yes, this was a DNF. I know. I'm just as surprised as you are. I thought I was going to love this book. Everybody and they mama, and I do mean everybody and they mama, loves this book. I don't think I know anyone that I associate with through Booktube, Bookstagram, any of that, who did not like this book. So I was like, I'm the first. Hi, it's me, the DNF queen. What a surprise. This started off well for me. I was here for it in chapter 1. I was cozy in my bed. I was getting all the vibes. And then I got to chapter 2 and the writing just started to go downhill for me. I'm going to consult my journal for some of my notes about this. I said for when we got to chapter 2, it got to stream of consciousness for my liking. It was just too much, getting his every thoughts and things I didn't need to know. And like someone would ask a question and then I'd have to deal with a whole page of his thoughts about that question before he would answer. And I'm like, why are you going on and on about this person? Just answer the question they asked you. You can go on for like a paragraph, but a whole page, get to it. So I was already kind of like, I don't know about this, but I kept reading. Then I got to chapter 3 and it got better. Chapter 3 is where we got to where the main character Linus goes to see extremely upper management. If you don't know about this book, it's about a young man named Linus who is a social worker and he works with magical youth. He goes to make sure they go to good homes. And then he gets a letter saying he's been invited to go see the extremely upper management of this division that he worked for. I forget the name of it. And, he's like, why me? What did I do? So like I said, when I got to chapter 3 is when he goes to see them. And that part was really good. I enjoyed the writing style, everything about that. I was fine with, even with his thinking. It was things that I needed to know. Like, what do you see? What are you thinking? What do you hear? You're going to see these important people. What's going on? So like I said, chapter 3, it was better. I was here for it. Then I got to chapter 4 and so on and so on. I actually got pretty far. I got to page 88, which, this is almost a 400-page book. So that ain't far. But I stopped at chapter 6. And so 4 and 5, I wasn't here for it. I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Reading is subjective. We're all different. As I said, this just didn't work for me. I just didn't like the writing style. I didn't care about Linus. I wanted to like him. The only character I cared about in this book was Calliope, his cat. And clearly that wasn't enough for me to push through with this book. When he goes to see the extremely upper management people, they tell him that they have a case they want him to go investigate. There is this home that has these magical youths that are very dangerous, possibly. And he finds out that one of them is Lucifer. So the kid's name is Lucy, short for Lucifer's son or Lucifer, whatever. And he needs to go check on these kids and see what's going on with them because they have been hearing some things. So anyway, he's like terrified because he finds out that Lucifer is there. So when he goes to the house, it was just too much description. It just wasn't working for me. It wasn't giving me the magical, cozy vibes I wanted. It wasn't giving me what I got in The Night Circus. It damn sure wasn't giving me what I got in Amari and the Night Brothers. I think that's the problem too. I read that before this, and this felt more like middle grade than adult to me. I don't know. Like I said, not much worked for me. I already said it wasn't magical enough. The humor wasn't for me. The kids that he encountered when he got there, a gnome, I was like, and the gnome was to me a grown woman, not a child. We had a were Pomeranian. There was just not much about this that I liked. And I'm so disappointed. I have wanted to read this book, I think, since 2020, or at least early in 2021. So unfortunately, like I said, this just wasn't for me. Everything ain't for everybody. This also followed a book that had a lot going on that I loved this month. And it just followed up behind that. And I don't care when it came. I just don't think this was for me. So sorry, DNF. moving on. Okay, so those were all my DNFs for the month. Hey, I only had 3. That's not bad. The rest of these, I have things to say, and it only goes up from here. Before we get into the books that I actually read this month, I want to thank the first commenter on my last video, which was my May TBR video, and that would be Jessica Dies. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't think it's Diaz. I hope it's Jessica Dies. But thank you, Jessica, for being the first commenter on my video. As I've said, comments mean a lot to me, especially when I first post the video, because it lets me know if you're liking it, how you feel, what you think, all that good stuff. So keep the comments coming. And now let's talk about my first reviewed book of the month. This one I also talked about in that Try a Chapter vlog, so I'm not gonna go too into it because I went really in depth in that video. But I'm speaking of Companions of the Night by Vivian Van Vel. Sounds like that's the way you're supposed to say it. But this one was chosen for me by my daughter. And when I got this book, I was like, hold up, because it says on the back, True Love. And it said vampire. So I was like, I haven't read a vampire book yet, so I don't know about this. But, you know, I ended up enjoying this book. This book was written in the 90s. It felt 90s. It was a little nostalgic. It reminded me of books that I used to read when I was in middle school and elementary school. It was fun. If you don't know, this book is about a young lady named Carrie who one night goes to her local laundromat because her little brother left a stuffed animal there, beloved stuffed animal, and he can't sleep without it. So she goes to the laundromat to retrieve this stuffed animal for him. And when she gets there, she's about to leave. But then these gentlemen show up and they have this man tied up, and they lock the door and tell her no one's leaving and that this man is a vampire and they need to prove that he's a vampire. So she's stuck here with these gentlemen and this potential vampire. So one thing leads to another. She escapes with said vampire. We don't know if he's a vampire for sure. And they go on an adventure and things ensue from there. Like I said, you can check out that vlog to see all that I had to say and learn more about what this book is about, because I talk about spoilers and everything. But as I said, this was a fun little ride. It was a page turner. Chapters were short, so it kept me interested. I wanted to know what was going to happen with her and this young man. I believe his name was Ethan. Yes, the young man's name was Ethan. And the romance part was actually not that big of a part of the story. I kept being like, where's the romance? The vampire part wasn't much of the story either. So this was more just like an adventure story and car ride and that kind of thing. The romance does come in at the end, which, you know, at that point, I was already kind of like, oh, Lord, all right. Because it was the insta-love thing that I don't like. But it didn't ruin the book for me because, again, I was along for the ride. But I ended up giving this 3 stars. As I said, it was enjoyable. It was a fun little book, quick little read. And yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by this one. Let's move on. Now, this next one I threw in after I DNF'd House in the Cerulean Sea. And I DNF'd House in the Cerulean Sea kind of like midway during the week. So I knew I didn't have time to get into a whole nother 200-300 page book. So I was like, let me go through my Kindle and see what novellas I have in here. And I had this one by an author that I've been interested in. And I was like, well, we'll check out this novella first and see how I feel. Lisa Unger is the author. And I am speaking of The Sleep Tight Motel. And this book is part of the Dark Corners collection, which is free on Kindle Unlimited. I will link it below. This one had me intrigued. It says about a young lady named Evie who is on the run, and she stops at this motel that's on the edge of the woods, and we have to see what's going to happen in this story. It is very atmospheric. I didn't know till I got like midway in the book that it takes place around Halloween time. So this is perfect for fall, spooky season. I wasn't sure if it was a mystery or what, because I just it doesn't give you much in the synopsis. So I wasn't sure what I was getting, but it kept me on the edge of my seat. It was a page turner because she's on the run and she keeps getting text messages. We do know she was in an abusive relationship. So I will say trigger warnings for domestic abuse, verbal and physical, can be difficult to read if that is something that you're sensitive to. I am not, but it was still like a little bit difficult to read at times. Yeah, so you do know she was in an abusive relationship. It seems as though that's who she's on the run from. And she's getting these text messages from someone saying, I'm watching you, I'm getting close. And you're just like, what is going on? At the same time, the owner of this motel, Drew, is super nice. And of course, you got your eye on him because you're just like, what's going on? And then she's trying to get out of the motel so she can get back on the road. Her car ends up not running, and it's just a bunch of stuff. In this little short novella, it was only, I think it says 48 pages, 48, 50 pages. So it's short, but there's a lot that goes on. And I will say I enjoyed Lisa Unger's writing. It put me in the moments. It made me, like I said, feel for this character. It was very suspenseful. And so I'm looking forward to reading more from her. I know she has that book that's like something, the 314, whatever. Whatever that book is, I'll put it up on the screen. I had that on my list before and I was considering it, and then I decided not to read it, but now I think I will. And then I know she has a book coming out end of this year, so I think I'm going to want to check that one out too. But this one had a nice little twist at the end that I was not expecting, and it took the book into another genre. I won't say what that is, but as I said, perfect for Halloween spooky season. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I recommend it if you ever need something to, help you, just throw in a little extra quick novella or something to help boost up your numbers or whatever. Any of that, I recommend it. So let's move on. Okay, these last 2 books I'm going to talk about are 2 books in the same series. So I saved them. One is a 4-star read, one is a 5-star. So I'm going to talk about the 5-star book first because it is the first book in the series. And I'm speaking of Helldivers. You're welcome. By Nicholas Sansbury Smith. Thank you. Yes, my daughter picked this for me for my April TBR, and I am so glad she did. I have actually been asking her, how did you find this book? Because I want to go find more books like it. I love this book. I talked about this in my Try a Chapter vlog, but I only read the first chapter, but I was already intrigued. So you can see how I felt when I first started this book. But this is a sci-fi, horror, thriller, all the good stuff. This is about a post-apocalyptic world that occurs after World War III, fictional World War III, of course, where Earth becomes inhabitable because nuclear bombs, explosions have gone off and have destroyed Earth. So the people who are left of humanity go up in these airships, but the airships cannot last for long. And at this point, they've been up there for decades, and I want to say centuries, at least 100 years or more. So these ships start to break down, and when they do, we need people to go back down to the surface to look for parts to help restore these ships so they can stay up in the air and we do not lose the little bit of humanity we have left. And these people who go down to the surface are called Helldivers. And in this first book, we are following Xavier, and he's called X. Most Helldivers only get to the maximum of 15 jumps before something happens to them tragically. And at this point, X has had great luck, skill, all that good stuff. He has made it to a lot more than that. When we start this book, he's going on a jump with some other Helldivers to go retrieve some things for the ship that they need. And in the very first chapter, this is not a spoiler, he loses a diver, and that sets up a part of his story that is very important because that Helldiver has a son. He asked him to look after his son. Xavier is single, no kids, no nothing. So he's like, what am I supposed to do with this kid? But he has been around this child his whole life. So of course he's gonna, give his friend his last wishes. So anyway, we get back on the ship, and of course, something else happens. A distress signal comes to the ship from another airship that has gone to this place called Hades, which is supposed to be the worst of the worst. Like, it's terrible down there. And in this world, Earth is just a mess, where we also have these creatures that have been deformed and mutated because of the nuclear things that have happened. And so it is very dangerous. And on Hades, again, it's supposed to be the worst. Like, some of these creatures are just horrendous. And there's also these electrical storms that happen that are a result of this nuclear fallout. All of that. Another ship is in danger of falling out of the sky, and they send some Helldivers to the surface to go look for some supplies to help with the ship, but they are in trouble and they send a distress call. So like I said, Xavier and another team of Helldivers are going to go to try to help them out. Meanwhile, there is drama on the ship. We have Captain Ash, who I loved, and she's trying to maintain things on the ship. This deals with classism because we have the lower deckers and the upper deckers. The lower deckers are the ones who are just kind of there. They don't really do anything. They don't really have a purpose in this, world. Because the upper deckers are the people who contribute to society, as they say. They are the Helldivers, they are the engineers, the captain, all the people that they deem more important. And the lower deckers are the ones that are subjected to radiation, so they have cancer and all kind of sickness, and they get rations of food. It's just a mess. They're just treated like crap. And so that creates tension on the ship and more intrigue for the story. And we're also going to follow the young boy that is left behind after his father dies on that first jump that we start with. And like I said, it's just a lot. I just loved it. But let me say, I don't think there's any other way to digest this book other than with the audiobook. I did hybrid read this with the audiobook, and the audiobook is just fan-freaking-tastic. Audiobook narrator is the best I have heard. It's like listening to a movie. I loved every minute of it. I couldn't wait to get back to it. I mean, I was enjoying it when I was reading it on my own, but when I picked up the audiobook, it just brought it to a whole nother level. But I was not trying to get into a series. I told my daughter, I was like, you know what? I'm going to read this one, but we're not getting into a series. But when I got to the end, where we left off, a character fate was left hanging in the balance, and I needed to know what happened to this person. And I even looked at the synopsis for the second book, and I thought I was going to get something, but they were smart. They didn't give anything away, so I had to pick up the second book. That's what we're going to talk about now. So, as I said, after reading the first Helldivers book, I had to know what was going to happen to this character. So I picked up Helldivers 2 Ghosts. And it's funny, my library only has one copy in all the libraries, but I got it. Yes. And of course, I also hybrid read this with the audiobook. I mostly actually read this on my Kindle because it took a minute to get this from my library, but I still wanted to have the hard copy for you for the video. And I also still enjoyed this book, not as much as the first one. Now, this one fast forwards 10 years later, and we are now following the young boy that was in the first book. His nickname is Tin because he always wore this tin hat that his father gave him to protect him from things. And so everyone called him Tin in the first book. In the second book, he is now a young man, and his name is Michael. Grown man. So we're following him, and I think I read that in the synopsis, so I was like, oh, I want to know what happened to Tin, so you got me. And then we have a new captain on the ship. You will have to read the second book to find out what happened to Captain Ash. If you are interested, I highly recommend it. We're following Captain Jordan in this book, and he is not nice, honey. He is no Captain Ash, and this book already starts off juicy with way more going on, more secrets. Captain Jordan is hiding so much from so many people, and I can't get into too many things because it would be spoilers for the first book, but he's hiding stuff, and that already sets up some intrigue. And so like I said, it's a lot of stuff going on in this book, but Captain Jordan is someone you will love to hate because he got on my goddamn nerves. I was like, if somebody don't take this dude out. But when I got to the end, I was like, okay, I see why he was here, because it definitely creates a good amount of tension and just so much with him. He's the villain. I'm gonna set that up. You will know when you get into this. He's the villain of the story. And like I said, I love to hate him. This one was a lot more action. We dealt with a lot more stuff on the surface. We find out more about these creatures that they call the sirens because they emit this loud, piercing sound that sounds like an alarm system that they have for, I guess, the nuclear explosions and stuff. But yeah, we find out more about them, where they come from, because I remember when I was reading the first book, I was like, the way they described it was kind of weird. Like, where would something like that come from? So anyway, we find out more about that. And of course, this one also leaves off on a cliffhanger. I still didn't get the answer that I was looking for, and I'm going to now have to read book 3. So she has gotten me into a series. Yes, I am now hooked. I don't know where I'm going to stop because I'm still enjoying it. So I already plan to read book 3 for June, my birthday month. And that lets you know right there how much I enjoy this series. But for book 2, Helldivers 2 Ghosts, I gave it 4 stars. As I said, I still really enjoyed it, along for the ride. Just not quite as much as book 1 because we were following Xavier, who I loved. And there was no character in this one that grabbed me as much as Xavier, but there's still heart and all of that in this one too. You end up caring about people and caring when they die and all that good stuff. Don't get attached to anyone because they will be taken away. So let's go. Let's move on. Let's go. So let's do it. Let's stack them up. I have a lot this month. Look at me. Oh my goodness. Here are all the books that I read and DNF'd in the month of April. So we got a lot. I hope you enjoyed this video, ladies and gentlemen. You put that down. Whew. So feel free to let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, and I'm sure you'll have things to say about House in the Cerulean Sea. It's fine, I can take it. And yeah, of course, you can let me know what your favorite book was that you read in the month of April. And if you have, please, any other recommendations that are similar to Helldivers, apocalyptic, sci-fi, horror books, please let me know. I am on the hunt. I found a couple, but I'm still looking. Clearly this is my thing. Let me know any Lisa Unger recommendations or what your favorite books are by her if you've read them. And I think that's it. If you don't have a comment and you just want to show me some love, let me know that you made it this far in the video. You can leave me a parachute or some kind of ship, something for hell divers, whatever you find that you think fits that. You can leave me that emoji below. And also ways you can support my channel are also linked below. Always. You can always donate coffee, tea, or money towards ebooks for new releases. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. So until next time, snuggle up in your hideaway with a good book, unplug as much as possible, be kind to all kind, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.